Let's face it, whether you're an adrenal-fueled passion machine or more stoic than a stoned glacier in your day-to-day, everyone gets a little aggy from time to time, and we've all lost it during the throes of a heated gaming session. Offline though, it's fine, you can brush off a boss until you've calmed down, but online, rage quitting can ruin the experience for everyone involved. It leaves teams unbalanced, causes a proper stinky attitude amongst the community, and let's be honest, makes you look like a f***ing little baby if you can't hack a loss every once in a while. Thankfully, some developers have systems in place to either punish or shame quitters in both multiplayer and single-player games. However, as with my failed run as a policeman, there are some developers who take no prisoners and dole out harsh beatings to those who dare try to cheat the system. With this in mind, I'm Jules, WhatCulture.com, and these are the 10 harshest ways video games punish you for rage quitting. Number 10. Mortal Kombat's Quitality. Quitting in an online fighting game should be considered a cardinal sin, especially if it's a ranked match and you're up against somebody who's absolutely trouncing you. Sometimes, like a bukkake, you've got to take it on the chin. Whilst most titles figure out a way to punish these players though, Mortal Kombat thought of a way to absolutely humiliate them. Not only are there the regular penalties and threats of timed bans, but quitting players also have to suffer a brutal quitality. Instead of unceremoniously ending the round by fading to black, deserted matches still end in classic MK fashion with the quitting fighter's head spontaneously exploding. It's Mortal Kombat through and through, and while it's still annoying to be ditched, at least the remaining player gets to be showered in the brains of their cowardly opponent. Number 9. Rainbow Six Siege bans you from ranked and caps your XP. When Rainbow Six Siege first launched, much like an AA meeting hosted by Buckfast Wine, it had a real quitter problem. Being such a balanced team-based game, players abandoning the losing side would doom that team to an inevitable loss, robbing them of the chance to make an epic last-minute comeback. When the devs at Ubisoft introduced a ranked mode though, they also established some ground rules for players intentionally quitting and disconnecting. If they quit, players would face a 15-minute ban and even a block on earning the in-game currency in any mode. Oh, and your rank would also be lowered as well, meaning that much like my lovemaking, your momentary rage-filled decision would leave you with lasting scars. Now, this is all well and good, but Ubisoft clearly hadn't factored in that sometimes their servers were absolute garbage, and often disconnects would happen, resulting in players being penalized for their sin of not being able to play the game properly. You're welcome. Number 8. Dead by Daylight strips resources from players who only want to be the killer. In a game as tightly balanced as Dead by Daylight, where one player is cast as a vicious killer on the prowl for a team of 4 survivors, even one person leaving early can throw off the whole dynamic of a match. Consequently, the developers included a pretty rigorous penalty system for people who abandon ship, stripping them of 3 points that go towards their ranking, while also forfeiting any of the blood point currency they'd earned in the game to that point. If you quit as a survivor, you're hit even harder though, also losing all of the items and resources you had equipped for the match. The title never resorted to outright bans, and you're never restricted from playing altogether, but you'll be noticeably worse off the next time you try to jump into a match. It's harsh, but at least it punishes players who don't like the role they've been given, unlike the similar Friday the 13th, which lets its fan base off quite lightly for joining a match and then immediately leaving in the hopes of donning those stinky and very bloody overalls of Jason. Number 7. Persona 4 Arena makes sure everyone knows who the quitters are. A surprisingly brilliant fighting game spin-off, Persona 4 Arena thought of an excellent way to shame players who constantly disconnect from online matches. Instead of going down the path that most games do, punishing quitters with bans and penalties, Arena instead makes it so that other players know what type of fighter they're up against. If you bail on too many matches, eventually your name will turn red, marking you out as a player who has a tendency of, not seeing fights out to their finish. Consequently, when matching with other players online, there's a good chance that most good fighters will back out of a fight with somebody with a red name, resulting in the quitters being ostracized by most of the title's core player base. I'll learn 'em, eh? Number 6. Street Fighter V implements full-day bans after 3 strikes. Since Street Fighter V launched, Capcom has constantly tightened the noose on players who rage quit during online matches, getting more and more extreme with the punishments they decide to dole out. Now it's gotten to the point where the devs don't mess around or mince words, implementing an automated penalty system that immediately punishes serial quitters. Although you can disconnect from a game once or twice without suffering any real consequences in attempt to lessen the burden on people who genuinely lose connection during a fight, after leaving a match early for the 3rd time, players will be hit with a 24-hour online online ban and 1,000 league points deducted from their profile. Losing the league points is a major hit to your standing in the game, but it's the full day time out from the multiplayer that's the real kicker. God, 24 hours in this hellhole we call Newcastle. Ugh, I'm sorry to all involved. Number 5. Paladins puts players back into the same game they just quit. Paladins has a pretty robust system to counteract rage quitters, not even giving the players to manually leave a ranked game and dropping the ban hammer on players trying to disconnect with a hard reset. With the duration the ban lasts increasing with every indiscretion, even if you decide to leave at the start of a match, you'll be still hit with a ban, meaning that once you're in the game, you're stuck with it no matter what. However, the title doesn't only punish those leaving ranked matches, and in an attempt to discourage players from trying to quit casual games, the devs implemented a system that means even if you manage to disconnect from the game and join another match, you'll always be put back to the same one you deserted in the first place. Obviously though, quitters won't have the stats they ranked up before they left, meaning not only did they have to continue with the match, but they lose out on the progression they acquired up until that point. Nasty. Number 4. Animal Crossing's Mr. Rossetti tells you off for quitting without saving. I'm not sure why you'd ever rage quit in Animal Crossing, but if you ever find yourself angry enough, or let's face it, lazy enough to close the game without properly quitting out of everything, you'll be due a visit from a very particularly angry mole called Mr. Rossetti. Showing up the next time you boot up the game, the mole, who may or may not have ties with the mob, watch out, will meet you at your house and give you a stern ticking off, lecturing you for not saving before shutting everything down. Popping around for a short but aggressive lecture, a visit from Mr. Rossetti will be enough to make sure you don't get too hot-headed and turn off Animal Crossing before saving ever again. Number 3. For Honor punishes the many for the acts of the few. Although it didn't release with a system in place to punish quitters, Ubisoft's For Honor made up for it when they introduced a ridiculously harsh penalty system in a later update. Initially not being too out of the ordinary, the game warns the players attempting to quit that they'll be given a 10-minute ban if they decide to go through with it. However, this time restriction doesn't mean that you can just pop into another game until you're free again, as the timer only ticks down when you're logged into For Honor's menus. And let's face it, those menus are not engaging in the slightest. They're not even in my top 10 menus. Well, no, stop writing. I don't want to do a list on that. Stop writing. No, stop writing. Weirdly though, if a leader of a group decides to bail, all of their teammates get the same punishment as well. It's a tad extreme to say the least, and has probably ended more friendships than it's actually stopped people from quitting. Number 2. Overwatch has an unspoken quitting threshold. One of the most popular multiplayer games of the decade outside of your mum, there's my one per list quota, it would be an understatement to say that players take Overwatch matches quite seriously. And by that I mean if you make one single mistake, you're going to get your ears pounded by a group of strangers calling you the worst things imaginable. It's a fun game, right? And enough to make you want to quit. But don't do that. It turns out that the game analyzes the last 20 matches you've played and your completion to quit ratio. If it drops under half, then you'll get a 75% XP reduction for all future games until you get back in the positive. If you're a rageaholic, which actually doesn't make sense because you're not addicted to rage-a-hole, then you're going to make this process even harder, as if you quit again and again, you're only digging that hole even deeper. And number 1, Marvel vs. Capcom 3 restricts you to a server populated only by quitters. Marvel vs. Capcom 3 doesn't have the flashiest way of punishing players. There are no brain explosions to be found here, but it does have one of the harshest and most insidious penalty systems around. Because if you decide to puss out, then you'll be lumped with all the other players who decided to play hooky. That's right, an entire server built of those who quit, an Alcatraz of assholes who all spam and get pissy with each other. It's brilliant, a self-contained bubble in which they don't affect the main populace with their poison, but still get to rage quit on each other to their heart's content. Much like having a prostitute die on you, which allows you to recoup all of your ducats, that's what I call a win-win. And that's our list. Got any other games which harshly punish rage quitters? Well, let me know about them in the comments section below. Then why not head back to whatculture.com for more news and articles like this every goddamn day. As always, I've been Jules, you've been awesome, and I'll speak to you soon.